When I called my son to ask when his wedding would be, his wife looked me dead in the eyes and said, "We already got married yesterday. Only special people were invited." Those words cut me deeper than any knife. And how all this happened? Let's start from the beginning. I'm Mae Jackson. I'm 71 years old, and I thought I'd done everything right as a mother. My son, Derek, was my pride, my joy, my reason for living after my husband Robert passed away. For 3 years, I helped him and his wife Tanya, paying their rent, buying their furniture, even filling their fridge when they had nothing to eat. Before continuing, please subscribe and tell me where you're watching this story from. Because what I'm about to tell you is still unbelievable. That day, when Tanya smiled that cold smile and said, "Special people," I froze. I had bought her the very couch she was sitting on. The pink dress I picked for her wedding still hung in my closet, untouched. "Useless, Mom," Derek said softly. Avoiding my eyes, "It was just a small ceremony. Just us and the witnesses." But I knew he was lying. I saw the pictures online, Tanya's parents, her siblings, champagne toasts, all of them celebrating. Without me. I had given Tanya $800 last month, for personal things. Turns out, I had helped buy the dress I wasn't invited to see. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept staring at my reflection, asking myself, when did I stop being family? The next week, my phone rang. It was Tanya, her voice shaking. "Miss May, the rent's due. The landlord's threatening to kick us out. You forgot to make the transfer." Forgot? No, I didn't forget. I finally remembered myself. I took a slow breath and said calmly, "Tanya, didn't I tell you? I only help special people." There was silence, the kind of silence that feels heavier than any scream. For the first time in years, I wasn't the one trembling. "Viewers, tell me honestly, what would you have done? Would you still help a child who treated you like that?" For years, I thought my love could buy me respect. I paid their bills, bought their furniture, handled their emergencies. I thought if I gave enough, they'd see my heart. But love isn't something you can pay installments on. That night, I cried, not because of pain, but because of realization. I'd spent over $20,000 keeping 2 grown adults comfortable while I lived small. Beans and rice for me, steak dinners for them. The next morning, I made myself coffee and whispered, "No more." It was time to see what independence tasted like again, for the first time in decades. I didn't call Derek to check if he was okay. I didn't look at my phone waiting for an apology that would never come. I was finally, truly, thinking about myself. When I opened my bank book, the truth stared back, over $33,000 gone in 3 years. Rent, groceries, gifts, car repairs, furniture, medical emergencies, all of it gone. I whispered to myself. That's the price I paid to learn my worth. Would you, viewers, forgive your child after that? Or would you finally take your life back? As I sat at my kitchen table, I realized something powerful. I didn't lose a son that day. I found a woman I had forgotten existed, me, and that was the beginning of everything that came next. Don't miss the next part, because that's when May walks into the bank, cancels the transfers, and shocks everyone who thought she'd never say no. That next morning, something inside Mae Jackson had shifted. It wasn't just anger anymore. It was a cold, clear determination that she hadn't felt in years. She stood in front of the mirror, her tired eyes looking back at her, the same eyes that had watched Derek grow up, the same eyes that once lit up at every phone call from him. But this morning, they looked different. There was a sharpness there, a steadiness she didn't recognize. She brewed her coffee in silence, the smell filling the small kitchen that used to hold laughter, birthday cakes, and long talks that no longer existed. May didn't reach for her phone. She didn't check for messages. For the first time in years, she wasn't waiting to be needed. She sat at the table and pulled out her checkbook, old bank statements, and a pen. If she was going to start over, she needed to know exactly what had been taken from her. Her hand trembled slightly as she wrote the numbers. Rent, $500 for 36 months. $18,000. Groceries and supplies, $200 a month. $7,200. Gifts, $3,000. Medical emergencies, $800. Car loan, $2,500. Furniture and repairs, $1,800. Total, $33,400. She whispered the number like a prayer and closed her eyes. That was the price of her silence, the price of her unconditional love. May thought about the last 3 years. Every canceled trip, every friend she'd turned down for lunch because she didn't have extra money. Every dress she'd left hanging in the store. She had been living half a life, funding a full one for others. The phone rang, once, twice, 3 times. Derek's name flashed on the screen. Then Tanya's. May let it ring until the house fell quiet again. 10 minutes later, it rang again. A text came through. "Mom, please answer. We need to talk." She deleted it without replying. By afternoon, she stepped outside for a walk, her first one in months that wasn't to a bank or store for someone else's errand. The crisp air touched her face gently. She walked through the park where she used to take Derek when he was little, remembering that sweet boy who once hugged her tight and said, "You're the best mom in the world." Where had that boy gone? May stopped near the pond and watched the water shimmer. Love, she thought, was supposed to be returned. Not demanded. Not bought. At the corner of the park stood the same bank she had visited hundreds of times before. This time, she walked in for herself. The branch manager, Mr. Carson, waved when he saw her. "Mrs. Jackson. Haven't seen you in a while. I'm here to cancel all automatic transfers to my son and his wife," she said firmly. His smile faded. "Are you sure, Mrs. Jackson? You've been sending that money regularly for years." "I'm sure," she said. "I've opened my eyes." Mr. Carson nodded slowly, perhaps seeing something new in her face, a kind of peace. "Understood, ma'am. I'll stop all future transfers and secure your accounts. No one else will have access." As he typed, her phone vibrated again, Derek calling, then Tanya. She turned it off completely. When the paperwork was done, Mr. Carson handed her a copy. "I hope you're not being pressured to do this," he said kindly. "You've been generous to your family." May smiled faintly. "I'm not being pressured, Mr. Carson. I'm finally done pressuring myself." When she stepped out of that bank, she felt 20 pounds lighter. For the first time in years, her money, and her life, belonged only to her. That evening, she sat on her porch, watching the sunset stain the sky orange and gold. She could almost hear Robert's voice in the wind. Soft and proud, "That's my girl." She whispered back. "I'm finally learning, baby." And for the first time in a very long time, May felt something she had almost forgotten existed, peace. Don't miss the next part, because that's when May returns home to find her son, his wife, and a stranger going through her private papers, and learns just how far they'll go to control her life. When May Jackson pulled into her driveway later that day, something felt off. 3 cars were parked in front of her small brick house, Derek's, Tanya's, and a silver sedan she didn't recognize. Through the window, shadows moved inside. Her pulse quickened. She had given them spare keys long ago, thinking one day they'd take care of her. Never did she imagine she'd need protection from her own blood. May took a deep breath, steadied her trembling hand, and opened the front door. The scene froze her. Derek sat on her sofa, head in his hands. Tanya paced the room like a restless animal. At her dining table, a man in a gray suit flipped through her papers, her bank statements, insurance documents, even Robert's old pension files. "What is happening in my house?" May's voice was stronger than she felt. All 3 turned, startled. Tanya rushed toward her with that same desperate tone she used when she needed money. "Miss May, thank God you're here. This is Mr. Fisher, he's from a law firm. We just want to talk." "About what?" "About your situation," the man said smoothly, stepping forward. "Your children are worried. They believe you may need help managing your finances." May walked right past him, gathered the papers he had touched, and stacked them carefully in her arms. "These are my private documents. You have no right to look at them without my permission." "Mom," Derek said softly, rising to his feet, "you've been acting strange. You stopped the transfers without telling us. You don't answer your phone. We're just concerned." Tanya moved closer, her voice sweet but rehearsed. "Miss May, stress can do strange things. Sometimes loneliness can confuse people your age." May froze. Confuse people your age. Now she understood. They weren't here to talk. They were here to declare her incompetent. "I am not confused," she said, her tone cutting the air like glass. "I am clearer than I've been in years. And all of you, out of my house." Mr. Fisher raised his palms, pretending calm. "Mrs. Jackson, please. Your family only wants to ensure your safety. They've documented behaviors?" May interrupted sharply. "Like deciding that my money belongs to me? Or refusing to finance 2 grown adults who treat me like a stranger?" Tanya's mask cracked. "We never treated you badly. Everything you have will belong to us one day anyway. We're just speeding it up." There it was, the truth without disguise. In their eyes, she was already gone. Her savings were an inheritance they couldn't wait for. May pointed to the door. "Get out." Derek's voice hardened. "Mom, you can't just cut us off. We have bills, the car loan, the rent, the credit card you co-signed." "I can," she said, her voice rising for the first time. "Because I've paid for years for a life that didn't include me." Mr. Fisher opened his briefcase and placed a folder on the table. "Mrs. Jackson, this is a temporary power of attorney. It would allow your son to manage your finances while you focus on your well-being." Without even opening it, May tossed the folder straight into the trash can. "The only transition happening here," she said, "is you, to the front door." Tanya's tears began to fall, but May could see through them now. "You can't do this, Miss May. We counted on you. We made plans." "You made plans with my money," May replied coldly. "Not with my love." Derek stepped closer. Mom, please. You're going to regret this. You'll end up alone. May's eyes met his, and for the first time, she saw him, not as her little boy, but as a man who loved comfort more than conscience. I'm already alone, Derek. The difference now is that it's by choice, not neglect. When the front door closed behind them, the silence that filled the house wasn't empty, it was peaceful. It was the silence of freedom, May exhaled, steady and proud. She had just done something she never thought she could, she had chosen herself. Don't miss the next part, because that's when May seeks legal help, learns her rights, and discovers her son's plan was darker than she ever imagined. That night, May Jackson didn't sleep. Not because she was scared, but because her mind was racing with clarity. She sat on her bed, the lamp glowing softly beside her, replaying every word Derek and Tanya had said. You'll end up alone. We just want to help. Everything you have will belong to us one day. Each phrase echoed like a warning from a past version of herself. The woman who once believed that love could be purchased with sacrifice. By sunrise, May was dressed, steady, and ready to fight back. Her first stop was the law office of Mr. Weber, a man she had met years ago when managing her husband Robert's will. He was kind, methodical, and had a reputation for protecting elders from financial abuse. When she entered his office, he stood to greet her. Mrs. Jackson, he said warmly, it's been a long time. What brings you in? May sat down, clutching her purse tightly. It's my son, Derek. And his wife. They're trying to take control of my money. Mr. Weber's calm expression grew serious. Tell me everything. For the next hour, she recounted the story, the secret wedding, the humiliation, the years of paying rent and bills, the invasion of her home, the lawyer they brought, and the attempt to declare her mentally unstable. When she finished, Mr. Weber leaned back and exhaled slowly. Mrs. Jackson, what you're describing is called elder financial abuse. It's sadly common, and it's a federal crime. A crime? May whispered, the weight of that word surprising her. Yes. Forcing, manipulating, or deceiving an elderly person into giving up financial control, that's abuse. The fact that they entered your home without permission and went through private documents makes it even more serious. May looked down at her trembling hands. For years, she had seen herself as foolish, weak, too soft. Now, for the first time, she realized she had been a victim. Mr. Weber continued, here's what we'll do. First, we'll document every dollar you've sent them, rent, groceries, emergencies, everything. Second, we'll secure your accounts. Third, we'll prepare legal boundaries in case they try this again. For the next 3 hours, they went through her bank records. Line after line of transfers and payments. $33,400 in total. Mr. Weber shook his head. Mrs. Jackson, with this money, you could have traveled the world. You could have lived freely. May smiled faintly. Maybe I couldn't before, but I will now. When she left his office, she felt stronger. Every step back to her car sounded like freedom taking form. Her next stop was the hardware store. The owner, Mr. Summers, had known her for years. Miss May. Back again? What did Derek break this time? May smiled, this time without bitterness. Not this time, Mr. Summers. I'm changing all my locks, and I want the best ones you've got. He blinked, surprised but respectful. Good for you, he said quietly. While she browsed the locks, a young man approached. I'm Ethan, he said politely. I do security system installations. Cameras, alarms, motion sensors, whatever you need. May paused, then nodded. Install the full system. Every door, every window. And make sure it's connected directly to the police. When she returned home, she placed the new locks on the counter and took one long look around the house. Every photo, every piece of furniture, every shadow in the corners told a story, but this next chapter would be hers alone. Her phone began to ring again. Unknown number. She already knew who it was. She let it ring until the sound faded. She was done answering. The sun dipped low outside, painting her porch golden. For the first time in years, she smiled, not because of anyone else, but because she had chosen herself. Don't miss the next part, because that's when May gets a call from Tanya that changes everything. And the truth behind their desperation finally comes to light. 3 days passed without a single word from Derek or Tanya. The silence felt strange at first, too quiet, almost suspicious. But to May Jackson, it also felt like the calm after a storm. She spent those days cleaning, rearranging her furniture, and even opening the old record player Robert had bought her on their 10th anniversary. The jazz tunes filled the house, and for the first time in years, it sounded like home again. But that peace didn't last long. On the 4th afternoon, as she sat on her porch sipping sweet tea, her phone buzzed. Tanya's name. May hesitated but answered, her voice calm and steady. Tanya. There was silence on the other end, then soft sobbing. Miss May, please, I know you hate me, but I didn't know what Derek was planning. I swear I didn't. May frowned. You didn't know what? Tanya's voice cracked. He took out another loan in your name. He said you'd co-signed it, but I think he forged your signature. The bank's been calling. I didn't know how to tell you. May's hand tightened around the phone. What did you say? Please don't be mad. I told him it was wrong, but he said you wouldn't notice. He said he'd fix it before you found out. But now, the collectors are calling me too. May closed her eyes, forcing herself to breathe. She had worked all her life to pay off her debts, to keep her home safe, and now her son, the boy she once cradled, had stolen her name. Send me the paperwork, she said quietly. All of it. Within an hour, Tanya sent pictures of the documents, the loan agreement, the forged signature, and even a copy of May's driver's license that had clearly been scanned. Tears filled May's eyes, but this time they weren't from sadness. They were from something stronger, resolve. She gathered every paper, every screenshot, and drove straight to Mr. Weber's office. He looked up from his desk when she entered. Mrs. Jackson, back so soon? She placed the documents in front of him. My son forged my signature. He's using my credit. Mr. Weber's expression darkened. Then we'll act fast. He photographed everything, typing notes rapidly. We'll contact the fraud department at your bank and file a police report immediately. Forgery and identity theft are serious offenses, even if it's family. May's lips trembled. He's my son, Mr. Weber. I don't want him in jail. Mr. Weber's tone softened. I understand. But if we don't act, he'll ruin your life. Sometimes protecting yourself is love, just not the kind he understands. As he made the calls, May sat in silence. She remembered Derek as a boy, holding her hand at the grocery store, whispering, "Don't ever leave me, Mama." Now she was the one whispering that same plea, but to the version of him that no longer existed. When the bank confirmed the fraud claim, May felt her heart heavy but calm. Justice had begun its work. That night, she returned home exhausted. She poured herself tea and sat on the porch again, the night air cool against her face. A faint sound broke the quiet, footsteps on gravel. She looked up and froze. Derek stood at the edge of her yard, his face pale, eyes hollow. He didn't move closer. "Mom," he said softly, "why are you doing this to me?" May didn't speak. She just watched him, realizing how much distance had grown between them, not in steps, but in morals. "You called the bank, didn't you?" he said. "You told them it was fraud." She stayed silent. Derek clenched his jaw, tears forming. "You don't understand, I was desperate. Tanya's pregnant. I needed help." May's eyes flickered with shock, but her voice remained steady. "You should have asked, Derek. Not stolen." He dropped his gaze. "I thought you'd say no." May's heart broke again, not because of the crime, but because of how little he knew her anymore. She turned toward the house. "You need to leave now. I'll pray for your child, but I won't be part of your lies." Behind her, she could hear his quiet sobs fading into the dark. Don't miss the next part, because that night, May receives a visit from the police and learns that Derek's actions have gone even further than she imagined. The next morning, a sharp knock echoed through May Jackson's house. She had barely slept, her mind replaying Derek's broken expression over and over. The sound startled her so badly that her coffee spilled across the kitchen table. She opened the door. 2 uniformed police officers stood there. A man and a woman. The male officer stepped forward politely. "Mrs. Jackson?" "Yes. I'm Officer Brooks, and this is Officer Daniels. We're here regarding a report filed last night concerning identity theft under your name." May nodded slowly. "Yes. My attorney handled that. My son, he forged my signature." The female officer gave her a sympathetic look. "We understand how difficult that must be, ma'am. We just need to confirm a few details and collect a statement." May led them inside. The officers sat at the small dining table, the same table where Derek once did his homework, where birthday candles had been blown out, where Tanya had laughed over dinner. Now, it felt like a courtroom. Officer Brooks pulled out a folder. "Your bank provided evidence of a $12,000 personal loan and 2 credit cards recently opened in your name. We also have proof of withdrawal activity from a location near your son's address." May's chest tightened. 12,000, she whispered. He nodded. "Yes, ma'am. Did you authorize any of these?" "No." "Then we'll proceed with the case as financial fraud and forgery," Officer Daniel said softly. "We'll also need to collect your fingerprints to exclude you from the forged documents." May agreed. Her voice stayed calm, but inside she was trembling. Signing papers that accused her son felt like tearing her own heart apart. When they finished, Officer Brooks closed his notebook. "We'll handle this carefully, Mrs. Jackson. But you should be aware, cases like this often involve arrests." May looked away, her eyes wet. "He's my only child, officer." "I understand," he said gently, "but even family can cross lines that the law must correct." After they left, the silence felt heavier than before. May sat in the living room, staring at the old family photos on the wall, Derek's graduation, his wedding announcement, and that faded picture of Robert holding their newborn son. The phone rang again. This time, it wasn't Derek or Tanya. It was Mr. Weber. Mrs. Jackson, he began carefully, I just got off the phone with the detectives. They've confirmed the documents were forged. But there's something else. May's stomach nodded. What is it? The loan wasn't the only one. Your son also attempted to use your house deed as collateral for a private loan from a man named Harris Vaughn, not a bank. Likely an illegal lender. Her hand flew to her mouth. He tried to put my house up? Yes, Weber said gravely. Fortunately, the forgery was caught before it was processed. But this man, Vaughn, may come looking for payment. May's voice dropped to a whisper. So I could have lost my home. Exactly why you came to me, Weber said. We're filing a protective order. And I'm requesting immediate monitoring of your property records. No one can touch your assets without your signature again. When the call ended, May stood there in silence, her heart aching, but also hardening. The love she once poured endlessly had turned into something else. Not hatred, but distance. By evening, as the sky dimmed to orange, May sat on her porch again. She thought of Robert, how he used to say, you can't save someone who keeps digging the hole deeper. She whispered, you were right, baby. Just then, her neighbor, Gloria Jenkins, walked over. A warm, middle-aged woman with kind eyes. She leaned on the fence. May, I saw the police earlier. Everything all right? May sighed softly. Not yet. But it will be. Gloria nodded slowly. You know, sometimes love means letting go. That boy's gonna have to face what he's done. May looked out toward the street, her eyes steady. Maybe that's the only way he'll ever learn. Inside, the house was quiet, but it no longer felt lonely. It felt protected, and for the first time in a long time, May didn't dread what was coming next. She was ready for it. Don't miss the next part, because that night, May receives an unexpected visitor who brings news that turns her pain into something even deeper, a betrayal she never saw coming. That evening, as the moonlight fell over May Jackson's quiet house, a soft knock echoed on the front door. For a moment, she froze, her thoughts still tangled in the events of the morning. Slowly, she approached and peeked through the curtain. A familiar face stood on the porch, Tanya. Her eyes were red, her hands shaking, and her belly slightly rounded beneath her coat. May hesitated before opening the door. You shouldn't be here. Tanya's voice trembled. Please, Miss May. I had nowhere else to go. May sighed, stepping aside. Come in. Tanya entered quietly, her eyes darting around as if the memories inside the house still haunted her. She sat down on the couch, clutching a small handbag tightly to her chest. For a while, neither spoke. The ticking clock filled the silence. Finally, Tanya broke it. He's gone. May frowned. What do you mean, gone? Tanya swallowed hard. Derek. He ran away. The police came by the apartment this afternoon, and he didn't come home after work. He's not answering calls. May closed her eyes, her chest heavy. A mother's heart, no matter how betrayed, never stopped worrying. Do the police know? Yes, Tanya whispered. But they said he'll probably turn himself in soon. He's scared. May sat down across from her. He's not the only one who's scared, Tanya. You should have stopped him before it came to this. Tanya's eyes filled with tears. I tried. But he wouldn't listen. He said you'd forgive him like you always do. He said no matter how bad it got, you'd still be his mama. May looked away, her voice quiet. He was right about one thing. I'll always be his mama. But that doesn't mean I'll always be his safety net. Tanya wiped her cheeks. He thought he was helping us. We were drowning in debt. The bills, the rent, the baby coming. He panicked. But I swear, I didn't know about the forged papers until it was too late. May studied her for a long moment. Tanya's fear looked real, but May had learned that guilt and survival could wear the same face. You're expecting, May said softly. You'll need to take care of yourself and that child. Don't repeat the same mistakes. Tanya nodded weakly. I don't even know where to start. May stood, walked to the cabinet, and took out an envelope. Inside was $200 in cash, money she had saved for groceries. She placed it on the table between them. Take this, she said. Not as a handout, but as a beginning. You'll need food and shelter. But after this, Tanya, you need to find your own way. I can't fix what Derek broke, not this time. Tanya's lips trembled. You're still helping me? After everything? May's expression softened. Because I can't let bitterness be the only thing left in this house. But don't mistake mercy for weakness. Tanya nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. She reached out as if to hug May but stopped halfway, unsure if she had the right. May gave a small nod, allowing it. The embrace was awkward, full of unspoken regret and exhaustion. When Tanya finally left, May stood at the doorway watching her fade into the night. The air felt still, too still. Somewhere deep inside, May knew this wasn't the end of the storm. As she turned back toward the living room, the phone rang again. This time, the number was unfamiliar. She hesitated before answering. Mrs. Jackson? A man's voice said. This is Detective Lane. I'm following up on your fraud case. I'm afraid there's been a development. May's heart skipped. What happened? The detective's tone was firm but careful. We traced the forged documents to another account. It wasn't just your son who used your name. Someone else was involved, someone close to him. May's grip tightened on the phone. Who? We believe it's your daughter-in-law, ma'am. For a long second, May couldn't breathe. Tanya's trembling hands, her tears, her story, all of it flashed through her mind. The call ended with instructions to come to the station in the morning. May lowered the phone slowly, her chest aching with a new kind of hurt. She had offered kindness. And maybe, once again, it had been used against her. Don't miss the next part, because May confronts Tanya with the truth. And what happens next changes the meaning of family forever. The next morning. The sky was gray, heavy with rain clouds that hadn't yet opened. May Jackson sat quietly in her car outside the police station, her hands gripping the steering wheel. She had faced many storms in her life, but this one, she knew, would change everything. When she finally stepped inside, the officer at the front desk recognized her name. Mrs. Jackson? Detective Lane's expecting you. Room 3. May followed the hallway, her steps slow but firm. Inside the small interview room, Detective Lane stood up to greet her, tall, composed, with a voice that carried both respect and gravity. Mrs. Jackson, thank you for coming. May nodded. You said there was more to the case. Yes, ma'am. He opened a folder and turned it toward her. Inside were printouts of financial records, screenshots of transactions, and bank transfers. After tracing the loan, we discovered another account linked to your name. It received several payments from the forged loan, but the withdrawals weren't made by your son. May leaned forward. Then who made them? The detective paused. Your daughter-in-law, Tanya Williams. May closed her eyes, the realization cutting through her chest like a blade. She told me she didn't know anything. She said she was innocent. I'm sorry, ma'am. We have video evidence from an ATM near her apartment. The withdrawals match her schedule. We believe your son and Tanya both participated in the forgery, though Derek initiated it. She handled the cash. For a moment, May didn't speak. Her breath came in shallow waves, and her fingers trembled against the table. The kindness she had offered Tanya last night now felt like a wound reopening. Detective Lane continued gently, I know this isn't easy. But we'll need you to confirm your intention to press charges against both parties. Without your statement, the case will stall. May's voice broke slightly. I don't want revenge, detective. I just want peace. He nodded slowly. Then let's make sure they can't hurt you again. She signed the statement with steady hands, though her heart was heavy. As she stood to leave, Lane added, we'll contact you when we locate your son. For now, stay alert. And if either of them tries to reach you, call us immediately. May thanked him quietly and left the station. Outside, the first drops of rain began to fall, soft, deliberate, cleansing. By the time she reached home, the storm had broken. Thunder rolled overhead as she stepped into the kitchen, setting her purse on the counter. The sound of rain against the roof was almost comforting, until she saw it, the back door. Slightly open, her pulse jumped. May grabbed the nearest thing she could, a heavy flashlight from the drawer, and moved carefully toward the sound. Inside the living room, a figure stood near the mantel. It was Tanya, soaked from the rain, mascara running down her face. Tanya, May whispered, her voice shaking. You shouldn't be here. Tanya turned, eyes wide and desperate. Please, Miss May, don't believe what they told you. I didn't steal from you. Derek made me do it. He said he'd leave if I didn't help. I had no choice. May's tone hardened. You had a choice when you walked into my home with that other man. You had a choice when you lied to my face. Tanya stepped closer, tears falling freely now. I'm pregnant. I didn't want to lose him. I didn't want my baby to grow up without a father. May's eyes softened, but her voice remained firm. And what about me, Tanya? I've already lost my son. You took the last bit of trust one had left. Tanya covered her face, sobbing. I'm sorry. I just wanted to make it right before you found out. May shook her head. Making it right doesn't come after the damage. It comes before. Outside, lightning flashed through the window. Tanya turned toward the door. They'll arrest me, won't they? May didn't answer. The silence was her truth. Tanya walked slowly to the door, her shoulders trembling. I never meant for it to go this far. As the door closed behind her, May stood there for a long time, watching the rain pour down harder. Maybe forgiveness wasn't about forgetting. Maybe it was about finally knowing when to stop giving chances. She locked the door, turned off the lights, and whispered to herself. Enough. Don't miss the next part, because the next morning, May discovers a letter that Derek left behind. And what's written inside changes everything she thought she knew about his betrayal. By morning, the rain had stopped, leaving the grass wet and the air thick with the smell of earth. May Jackson stepped onto her porch, breathing in the quiet calm that followed the storm. But as she bent down to pick up the newspaper, she noticed something tucked near the door, a small, folded envelope with her name scrawled across the front in shaky handwriting. Her heart tightened. She knew that handwriting. It was Derek's. May carried the envelope inside, placing it gently on the dining table. For a long moment, she just stared at it, her hands resting against the wood. Part of her wanted to open it immediately, the other part feared what waited inside, truths, excuses, or something far worse. Finally, she sat down and broke the seal. Inside was a single sheet of notebook paper. Torn at the edges. Mom, I know you probably hate me now. Maybe you have every right to. I never wanted things to end up like this. I messed up more than I can ever fix, and I don't know how to face you anymore. May felt her throat tighten. Everything I did. It wasn't because I didn't love you. I did love you, Mom. I still do. But life kept getting harder and harder, and every time I needed help, you were always there. So I got used to leaning. Too used to it. I started thinking you'd always catch me, no matter how wrong I was. May pressed a shaking hand to her lips. I shouldn't have used your name. I shouldn't have touched your papers. I shouldn't have dragged Tanya into it. She tried to stop me, Mom. She didn't want to do any of it. I put her in that situation. I pushed her. May blinked. Tanya had told a different story, but now the lines blurred again, twisting into something more complicated than blame. I panicked. We were drowning. Debts kept growing, collectors kept calling, and with the baby coming, I wasn't thinking straight. I only wanted to protect my family. I never meant to destroy yours. She turned the page over, tears forming. They told me there might be a warrant out soon. I don't know when they'll come for me. I don't want you to see that. I couldn't stand the thought of you watching them take me away. May closed her eyes, the words almost too heavy to carry. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't expect anything. I just want you to know. I'm sorry. Really sorry. For everything. If I could go back, I would. I'd be the son you deserved. At the bottom, one final line, whatever happens next. Please take care of Tanya and the baby. May placed the letter down slowly, her hands trembling. She wiped her cheeks without realizing she had started crying. It wasn't just the apology. It was the boy she remembered, the boy who once brought her daffodils from the backyard, who used to run home after school shouting, Mom, I'm here. Now he was running again, but running from himself. She sat there for a long time. The letter lying open in front of her like a wound that had finally been exposed to air. Later that afternoon, May walked to the mailbox to send a letter of her own, not to Derek, but to Mr. Weber. She needed guidance. Not legal guidance this time, but something deeper. How to navigate being a mother in a moment like this. How to draw the line without losing what little she had left of her son. Inside the house, she placed Derek's letter into a drawer, not locked away, not thrown out. Just kept. A reminder of what had been broken. And perhaps, what could still be rebuilt one day. As evening arrived, May sat again on her porch, the soft breeze brushing her cheeks. She could feel the shift inside her, sorrow, strength, and something new growing beneath the pain. Not forgiveness. Not yet, but something close to understanding, and in that quiet moment, she whispered into the fading light, Lord, guide me through whatever comes next. Don't miss the next part, because May will learn the truth about Derek's disappearance. And the revelation forces her to face a past she thought she had left behind. The following morning, May Jackson woke before the sun. She hadn't slept long, but rest didn't seem important anymore. Her mind kept circling around Derek's letter, the apology, the fear, the desperation etched into every word. She walked into the kitchen and brewed a cup of coffee, listening to the soft hum of the machine. Everything around her felt still, like her home was holding its breath, waiting for what would come next. She took a slow sip, letting the warmth settle inside her. And then, as she always did from this part of her story onward, she whispered to herself quietly, almost like a reminder of the life she was rebuilding. Take a second to like and subscribe, and press the bell icon to stay with me for more stories like this one. It had become part of her rhythm now, a small promise to continue telling the truth, even when it hurt. As she sat at the table, the doorbell suddenly rang, sharp and unexpected. May's head snapped up. She walked to the door cautiously and opened it just enough to peek outside. On her porch stood Detective Lane, hands in his pockets, his expression heavy. Mrs. Jackson, he said quietly. May felt her heart begin to pound. Something's happened. He nodded once. May I come in? She stepped aside, letting him enter. The house felt smaller with him inside, as if the walls had shrunk to hold whatever news he carried. They sat at the table, the same place where May had read her son's letter. Detective Lane cleared his throat. We found Derek. May's breath caught. Her hand tightened around the edge of the table. Is he all right? He's alive, the detective said gently. But he's in custody. A weight lifted and dropped again all at once. Relief tangled with heartbreak. Lane continued, he didn't resist. Turned himself in early this morning. Brought the rest of the forged documents with him. May exhaled shakily. Did he say anything? The detective nodded. He told us he didn't want you living in fear. He said he needed to take responsibility. May closed her eyes, letting those words sink into her soul. Derek had finally taken a step on his own, a step she had prayed he'd take long before things went this far. Detective Lane paused, then added, but there's another issue. May looked up slowly. What now? Tanya. He hesitated. She came to the station this morning as well. She turned herself in, too. And she brought something we didn't expect. May's brow furrowed. What did she bring? A statement, Lane said. A full confession. She admitted to withdrawing the cash. She also admitted she tried to hide the documents when she realized Derek was in deeper trouble than she knew. May swallowed hard. She thought of Tanya's trembling hands the night she came in the rain, the fear, the tears, the confusion between truth and survival. Lane leaned forward. She told us she did it because she didn't want her child growing up without a father. She said she was trying to protect him. May stared at the floor. And now the child may lose both parents. The room fell quiet. Lane finally spoke again. The court will take her pregnancy into consideration. They usually don't detain expectant mothers unless the crime is violent. She'll likely receive probation or community service. May nodded, though her heart was still trembling. What about Derek? He'll face charges, but since he turned himself in and cooperated fully, it may reduce the sentence. May's eyes stung. He was a good boy once. I keep trying to remember that version of him. Lane softened. People lose their way, Mrs. Jackson. But sometimes hitting the bottom is the only way they learn to rise. He stood to leave. You'll be contacted about court dates soon. I'll keep you updated. May walked him to the door, watching him step back into the daylight. When the door clicked shut, she stood still, the quiet settling around her like a blanket she wasn't sure she wanted or needed. She walked to her living room, sat on the edge of the couch, and let her hands fall into her lap. She whispered to herself, Lord, help me be strong for what's coming. There were battles ahead, courtrooms, lawyers, decisions she never thought she'd have to make. But for the first time in a long time, she felt something steady inside her. Hope. Not for herself alone, but for the broken pieces of her family. Don't miss the next part, because next, May is asked to testify. And what she says in court shocks everyone, including her son. May Jackson woke before dawn on the morning of the hearing. The house was quiet, almost too quiet, as if every wall was aware of what she had to face today. She walked to the kitchen, made herself a cup of coffee, and leaned against the counter, her hands wrapped around the warm mug. A whisper left her lips, not loud, not forced, just part of her routine now. Take a second to like and subscribe, and press the bell icon to stay with me for more stories like this one. It kept her steady in times when her heart felt uncertain. She dressed slowly, choosing a soft gray dress and the pearl earrings Robert had given her years ago. She wanted to look strong, not broken. Today wasn't just about testimony. It was about reclaiming the dignity she'd lost while trying to protect a son who no longer protected himself. At 8 a.m., Mr. Weber arrived to drive her to the courthouse. You ready? He asked gently. As ready as a mother can be, May said. The courthouse was cold, full of echoes and faces she didn't recognize. Weber guided her through metal detectors, hallways, and finally into a small waiting room. On the wall hung a painting of a field of sunflowers, bright, warm, hopeful. May stared at it, wishing she could step into that world instead. A few minutes later, the door opened. Tanya stepped inside with an officer beside her. She looked exhausted, her belly slightly more pronounced, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. When her eyes met May's, she froze. Miss May, she whispered. May nodded, her face calm but unreadable. Tanya looked like she wanted to speak, but before she could, the officer beside her gestured for her to sit on the opposite side of the room. Moments later, another door opened. Derek walked in. He wore a beige jumpsuit, his wrists cuffed, his eyes lowered to the floor. May felt her breath hitch, not because she feared him, but because she recognized the little boy in his posture, shoulders caving inward, trying to become small, ashamed. He didn't lift his eyes until the officer guiding him said softly, "You can sit." When Derek finally looked up, his gaze landed on May. For a second, his face softened. Like the years of mistakes had melted away. "Mom," he whispered. May's hand instinctively moved toward him, but the officer stepped between them. She lowered her hand, swallowing the lump in her throat. The door opened again, and the clerk called them inside. The courtroom was simple, wooden benches, a heavy judge's desk, and rows of quiet spectators. Tanya sat at one table with a public defender. Derek sat at another with his attorney. May and Mr. Weber sat in the first row behind them. The judge, an older woman with stern eyes, began the hearing. Today we review the charges of forgery, fraud, and identity misuse in the case of Mrs. May Jackson. May's name echoed through the room like a wound reopening. The prosecution presented the documents, the forged loan agreements, the forged signature, the withdrawals on camera. It was undeniable. Then the judge called May to the stand. She stood slowly, walked with quiet dignity, and took her seat. Mrs. Jackson, the judge began, do you wish to testify regarding the charges brought forth today? May looked at Derek. His eyes were red, lips trembling. Then she looked at Tanya, who held her belly protectively, her face a mixture of fear and regret. Yes, Your Honor, May said softly. Mr. Weber nodded, giving her permission to speak her truth. May took a breath. I didn't raise my son to be a thief. I raised him to be a man. But he lost his way. They both did. And they hurt me. Her voice wavered, but she steadied it. But I also believe that people can learn from consequences. I'm not here to destroy my family. I'm here to protect myself. The courtroom was silent. She continued, I want justice for what happened. I do. But I also want the court to know that I don't wish for harsh punishment. I want accountability, not vengeance. Derek's head fell into his hands. Tanya wiped her eyes slowly. May finished with a quiet strength, what they did was wrong. But I pray this becomes the moment they finally grow. The judge nodded slowly, thoughtful. And May returned to her seat, her heart trembling but strangely lighter. Don't miss the next part, because the judge delivers a decision that changes the course of all their lives. And May learns that healing doesn't always look like forgiveness. When May Jackson sat back down after her testimony, her heart was pounding so loudly she could feel the pulse in her fingertips. The courtroom seemed to hold its breath. Even the air felt heavier, thick with tension that no one dared cut through. The judge lowered her gaze to the file in front of her, flipping through several pages with slow, deliberate movements. May watched her carefully, trying to read even the smallest sign, a raised brow, a tightened jaw, anything that could hint at what was coming. But the judge gave nothing away. Before the court proceeded, May quietly whispered to herself. Steadying her breath the way she had learned to do in moments of uncertainty, take a second to like and subscribe, and press the bell icon to stay with me for more stories like this one. It grounded her. Reminded her that even in pain, she still had a voice. The judge finally spoke. Before I make any decisions, I want both defendants to address the court. Tanya's attorney nudged her gently, and she stood. Her hands shook as she placed them over her stomach. Your Honor, Tanya began, her voice fragile, I know what I did was wrong. And I'm not here to make excuses. I didn't grow up with much, and I've made mistakes I wish I could take back. I followed Derek because I wanted our baby to have a father. I thought helping him meant protecting our family. But all I did was tear another family apart. Her voice cracked, and tears slipped down her cheeks. I'm sorry, Miss May, she whispered, turning toward May without fully meeting her eyes. I should have stopped everything before it got this far. She sat back down, shoulders trembling. The courtroom shifted as Derek was guided to his feet. He didn't look at his attorney. He didn't look at Tanya. He looked only at May. Mom. His voice broke immediately. I don't know how I became this person. I don't know when I stopped listening to the man Dad taught me to be. Or the son you raised. May's eyes filled, but she kept them steady on him. I thought I'd fix everything before you found out, he continued. I kept telling myself there'd be a way out. But the deeper I went, the more I dragged Tanya with me. I hurt the woman carrying my child. And I hurt the only person who ever believed in me. A tear hit the floor. I'm not asking you to forget. And I'm not asking you to heal fast. I'm sorry. And I'm ready to pay for what I did. He sat down slowly. The judge closed the file, her expression unreadable. This court acknowledges the seriousness of the crimes committed. Forgery, identity misuse, and financial abuse, especially toward a vulnerable family member, carry significant consequences. May's breath hitched. However, the judge continued, the court also sees that both defendants have shown remorse, cooperated with the investigation, and surrendered voluntarily. Additionally, Mrs. Jackson has expressed that while she seeks accountability, she does not seek to destroy the lives of her son or daughter-in-law. She paused. Therefore, the court's ruling is as follows: for Tanya Williams, no jail time. 3 years supervised probation. Mandatory financial counseling. Community service hours to be served after childbirth. Tanya burst into tears, covering her face with her hands. For Derek Jackson, the room went silent. Because the primary forgery and identity theft actions were committed by Mr. Jackson, the court sentences him to 8 months in county custody. Followed by 2 years probation. Mandatory financial restitution to Mrs. Jackson. May's hand flew to her chest. 8 months. It wasn't light. It wasn't harsh. It was a new beginning disguised as consequence. Derek bowed his head, tears falling freely. The judge struck her gavel. Court is adjourned. As the officers prepared to escort Derek away, he looked back at May. The kind of look that carries a lifetime inside it, regret, love, hope, and heartbreak all tangled together. "Mom," he whispered, too softly for anyone but her to hear. "Thank you." May placed her hand over her heart. It was all she could offer without breaking apart. And then he was gone. Tanya remained in her seat, trembling, unsure of where she stood now. May approached her slowly, placing a steady hand on her shoulder. "We'll talk later," May said softly. "One step at a time." Tanya nodded with shaking breath. Outside, as May stepped into the sunlight, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time, a quiet, aching strength. The storm had begun to clear. But healing would take time. Don't miss the next part, because May must confront the life waiting for her after the courtroom, and decide whether rebuilding her family is possible. Or if some things must stay broken. The days after the court hearing passed slowly, like the world was moving at half speed and waiting for May Jackson to catch up. Every morning, she'd stand on her porch with a warm cup of tea, letting the quiet settle into her bones. Peace was returning, but not without shadows. The house felt lighter, yet emptier, she whispered her steadying reminder to herself as she eased into her day. Take a second to like and subscribe, and press the bell icon to stay with me for more stories like this one. It wasn't just a line now, it felt like breathing. A gentle promise to keep telling her truth, no matter how heavy it became. A week after the hearing, May received a letter from the county facility. She held it carefully, smoothing the edges before opening it. Derek's handwriting stretched across the page, neater than she remembered. "Mom, they treat me fair here. The first days were hard, real hard. But it's forcing me to slow down. To think. To see the mess I made without blaming anybody but myself. I keep replaying your testimony. You didn't save me from my mistakes. But you didn't abandon me either. That means everything. I'm taking classes. They got counseling here too. I signed up for every program they had. I want to be better when I come home. I promise that." May's fingers trembled as she continued reading. "Please check on Tanya. I know I failed her. Tell her I'm sorry. Tell her I'm going to be a father she can count on when I get out. I'll write again soon. I love you, Mom." The last line blurred as tears filled May's eyes. She folded the letter gently and set it inside her drawer, the same drawer where she had kept his earlier apology. 2 letters. 2 versions of her son. One broken. One trying. Later that afternoon, there was a soft knock on her door. It was Tanya. Her eyes were swollen, her hair tied back, her hands resting gently on her belly. She looked small, fragile, exhausted. "Miss May," she began quietly, "I wanted to thank you. For not letting them take me away. For giving me a chance to fix my life." May stepped aside. "Come in." Tanya walked in slowly, glancing around the house as if every picture and every memory reminded her of the damage she'd caused. "I got my probation schedule," she said. "I'll be working at the community center. Counseling starts next week." She swallowed. "I'm scared. But I'm trying." May nodded softly. "Trying is a start, Tanya." They sat on opposite ends of the couch. Neither spoke for a moment, then Tanya whispered, "I want the baby to know family. Real family. But I don't know where to begin." May breathed deeply. The air felt thick, full of unspoken histories and new possibilities. "You begin," May said quietly, "by being honest. By being responsible. And by remembering that this child doesn't need perfect parents, just ones who don't run from their choices." Tanya's lip quivered. "Derek wrote me too. He told me he's changing. I want to believe him." "People change," May said. "But change only lasts when someone wants it for themselves, not for forgiveness." Tanya nodded. "I want to make things right with you, Miss May. I want to earn your trust. Step by step. I don't expect you to forget." May looked down at her hands. "I can't forget, Tanya. But I can choose not to carry the bitterness." Tanya's eyes filled again. "Thank you." Before leaving, Tanya gently lifted May's hand and placed it on her belly. A soft kick met May's palm. For the first time since everything began, May felt something warm rise inside her, not forgiveness exactly, but hope. The kind that takes root slowly. When the door closed behind Tanya, May walked to her porch and sat in her favorite chair, watching the sky turn shades of gold and purple. The world was still fragile. Her heart was still healing. Her family was still fractured, but she saw the beginning of something she didn't expect. Possibility. A quiet voice inside whispered, "Maybe broken things don't have to stay broken." May rested her hands in her lap and let the evening breeze settle her. The hardest chapters were behind her. And the final chapter was waiting. Don't miss the next part, the emotional final chapter of this story, where May chooses what family means going forward. And how to rebuild without losing herself again. 2 months passed, slow and steady, like the world itself was giving Mae Jackson time to breathe again. The seasons shifted, the trees turning shades of orange and gold, leaving little pieces of their past selves on the ground. Mae understood that feeling well. She, too, had shed parts of herself, broken trust, old wounds. The weight of carrying her family on her shoulders every morning. She sat on her porch with her cup of tea, whispering the quiet rhythm she had come to rely on. Take a second to like and subscribe, and press the bell icon to stay with me for more stories like this one. It wasn't just routine anymore, it reminded her that she still mattered. That her voice had value even after everything she'd survived. One cool afternoon, Tanya returned, not with fear or trembling, but with a kind of gentle confidence Mae hadn't seen before. Her belly had grown, round and full of life. She walked with careful steps, but her eyes held strength. I just came from my checkup, Tanya said softly as Mae welcomed her in. The baby's healthy. The doctor says he might come early. He? Mae asked, a small smile tugging at her lips. Tanya nodded. A boy. Mae felt something warm bloom in her chest, a warmth untouched by betrayal or disappointment. Your son will need love. Real love. The kind that doesn't run out when life gets hard. Tanya bit her lip. I hope I can give him that. Hope is the first step, Mae said gently. The rest is choosing the right thing, every single day. They sat together. And for the first time since everything had fallen apart, the silence between them felt peaceful. A week later, Mae received another letter from Derek. His handwriting had grown steadier, more focused. Mom, I'm learning. I'm facing myself in ways I never wanted to before. I'm working in the kitchen now. The counselor says I'm improving. I'm trying, Mom. Not because I want to look good, but because I want to be better when I come home. Thank you for coming to court. You didn't lie to protect me. You didn't use your pain as revenge. You stood in the middle. You did what a mother should do. I'm proud of you. I want you to be proud of me someday. Mae pressed the letter to her chest and closed her eyes, letting the ache settle in a way that felt less like pain and more like healing. When Tanya went into early labor 2 weeks later, Mae was the first person she called. The hospital room was small, warm, and humming with soft beeps. Tanya gripped Mae's hand tightly, sweat beading on her forehead. Hours later, a newborn's cry filled the room. A baby boy, tiny, warm, and perfect, was placed in Tanya's arms. She let out a soft sob of relief, then looked up at Mae. Do you want to hold him? Mae hesitated, her breath catching. Then she nodded. The moment she held him, this new life untouched by mistakes, carrying the blood of her son and the hope of a new beginning, tears streamed down her cheeks. The baby curled against her chest, his skin soft as breath. His name is Caleb, Tanya whispered. Caleb Jackson. Mae closed her eyes. Jackson. A name with a history that hurt, but also healed. Weeks later, Mae visited often. She helped Tanya with diapers, late-night feedings, doctor visits. She saw Tanya learning, growing, trying, truly trying. The day Derek was allowed his first video call, Mae lifted Caleb into the frame. Derek froze, covering his mouth as tears fell. Is that my boy? He whispered. Mae nodded. Your son. Derek cried openly, his face breaking with love and regret. Mom, I'll get better. I swear. For him. For you. Mae felt her heart soften, not fully healed, not fully trusting, but open. Open enough for a future, open enough for hope. When the call ended, she looked down at Caleb sleeping peacefully in her arms. She whispered, You're the start of something new, little one. Emotional closing, as you required. At the end of her story, Mae realized something powerful. Sometimes family breaks. Sometimes trust shatters. Sometimes love fractures in ways we never expect. But endings don't always stay endings. New life, new choices, new courage. They can transform pain into purpose. If anyone wanted to know what happened next, how Derek rebuilt his life, how Tanya became stronger, how little Caleb grew up, Mae always said the same thing: just ask in the comments below. And if this story touched you, like the video and subscribe for more stories that open your heart. Because even broken families can find light again, if they choose it.
Sometimes life takes turns we never expect. Every person in this story carried their own pain, their own choices, and their own consequences. Maybe you saw yourself in one of them, or maybe it reminded you of someone you once knew. What do you think happened next? What would you have done if you were in their place? If you have any questions about what happened to the other characters, or if you want me to share more about them, just comment below. I read every message you leave, and your thoughts truly mean a lot to me. And if this story touched your heart, inspired you, or even made you think differently, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It helps me keep sharing stories that move people, open minds, and remind us we're all human. At the end of the day, your support keeps these stories alive. Thank you for watching, for feeling, and for being part of this journey. More powerful stories are coming soon. Stay tuned and stay kind.